Greetings, people who, one, really like the accordion, and two, put up with these strange videos. In my last video, the amplified circle of fifths, number 8, I made a mistake on the chart that I showed toward the end. It should have been a B flat dominant 7, B flat dominant 7. So I made that mistake and I want to clarify it. Now, in this video, we want to talk about the circle of fifths in such a way that we can take away some of the confusion. Many years ago, Nikolai Daletsky, a Ukrainian, published a work called A Musical Grammar in 1677, and that was the first time the world got to see a drawing of the circle of fifths, the very primitive version. And here's a primitive version. All right, so for 342 years since this publication, very little has been done with the circle of fifths. Some people have fooled with it, but nothing really substantial happened. So over the many years, while trying to develop the ultimate scale chord system, at which I failed, I still picked up something, and along the way, I created what I call the amplified circle of fifths. All right, it's the amplified circle of fifths. It's made greater, and it looks like this. I finally, after all these years, made a chart that you can read a little bit better, a little bit neater, and that's that. Now, when I did my previous videos, it might have been a little bit confusing, so I'd like to try to clear up any confusion and just make it prettier. So the amplified circle of fifths has many features, and here I list only 17 of them. That's quite a bit, and the type is small, but there's a lot of nice features, and I'd like to quickly go over them. This might help clear the mind on this. On your amplified circle of fifths, all right, that's the whole chart. A given cell, like here's a cell, and here's a cell. You see you have your pie chart, your slices, and you have your donut rings, your concentric donut rings. So when they crisscross, they form little cells. Each one's a cell. So a given cell tone, that is a letter, all right, with a specifier, you would call it a sharp or flat, written in the cell. All right, a given tone written in a cell can represent a tone, a chord, or an entire scale. That's the beauty of it. Let's say you have your standard presentation like this. You're looking at the basic chart, all right? You're looking at that, and you look at a slice, and you see that letter in there can represent a single tone, a chord, or even a full scale. All right. Now also on your chart, immediate perfect fourths, perfect fifths, and perfect chords can be found. In other words, this is your basic circle of fifths here. All right. Okay, your perfect fourth, let's say your C is your tonal center, your F would be your perfect 4, your G would be your perfect 5, and these three tones form, all right, a horizontally contiguous tricell group. So that's how you get your perfect chord. You have your C, F, and G. We talked about that in previous videos, so you can review that if you want to. So immediate perfect fourths, fifths, and perfect chords can be found instantly on this chart. All right. Now we have uniform level change from ring to ring, and that's a minor third interval, a minor third, and a minor third. So we have uniform ring to ring level change in this amplified circle. And we also have consecutive relative minor, relative major formation here. Here's one, relative minor with its relative major, and here's two. This would be C would be the relative minor, E flat would be the relative major. So you have that. A given data ring can assume any quality. In other words, I'll show this again. Ordinarily, on the original default structure, you would have your counter major ring, minor ring, and diminished ring. But you can also change that. In your mind, you can consider this your major ring, minor ring, diminished, and this could just represent a single tone. Or you have this configuration here, or this configuration, or you could have in each slice, you could just have each cell represent the tone itself, just a single solitary tone. You can do whatever you want with it, and it's so handy. All right, very handy. Now another thing is well, you can see plainly and clearly that a given data ring is relative to any contiguous ring. In other words, once you have your qualities established, each ring is relative to the other. In other words, if this is the counter major, then this must be the major. If this is a major, this really should be the minor, etc. So we already covered that, but I wanted to point that out. All right. Then we have the aggregating slice. The aggregating slice, let's say we have, if you saw my previous videos, you have your subject slice, all right, which would include, let's say, your tonal center of C. Across from this subject slice is the aggregating slice. I did a video on this, several actually. That's your aggregating slice. And if you blow that up a little bit, take your subject slice, you isolate it and blow it up. All right, you look at it, and you go like this, and you would see that the aggregating slice, all right, is an offset vertical inversion of the subject slice. The rings are offset one level, and they're inverted, they're turned around. So that's what you get. That's a really cool thing I like about this. It took me a while to figure it out, but I like it. Okay, now the diminished data ring can be used to determine your sharps and flats that you need for any key. I did a video on this. I already talked about this. You have this imaginary principal line, right, to determine your flats, and you have the imaginary offset principal line to determine your sharps. I already did a video on that, so you can review that if you want to. All right, so we covered that. And diminished chords, like boom, 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 there's a diminished. Or you can take all these all these tones in this slice, and you get a diminished seventh chord. So you can do that in any slice. Gives you your diminished and your diminished seventh chords, and they're inherent. They're built into each slice. That's how it worked out when I was doing this. Now let's stop for a moment there, because remember, we want to get rid of any confusion. And you say, well, Joey, you did all those accordion videos, and you talk about the stradella bass, and you talk about the bass row and the counter bass row, right? And you see here that from C, your bass, to your counter bass, it's an interval of a major third. And you say, well, why didn't you use that on your handy amplified circle fifth chart? All right? And I say, well, I did try to consider the accordion, and the closest thing I got was on the accordion with 140 bass machine buttons, a little bit bigger than your regular 120. All right, so I did study this, I did look into it, and I discovered that you have your bass row, all right, your major chord buttons and your counter bass, then you have another counter bass row. All right, so in your regular counter bass row, you have the interval of a major third, but in your extra counter bass row, you do have that minor third interval. So you see, from C to E flat, somebody did consider this. That's as far as I got. I couldn't find anything else that uses this interval. This is the only thing I could find. But at least I found it. I considered it, and then I moved on. So I wanted to tell you that. Now, in my system, dedicated quadrants, all right, are realized. In other words, in my system, it's designed such that you can take any three slices and you're going to have a quadrant. You see, you're going to have a quadrant, all right? A given quadrant, any quadrant, all right, contains all three diminished seventh chords. In other words, there's only three diminished seven chords. A C diminished 7, a D flat diminished 7, and a D diminished 7. And all the rest of them are just inversions. But the basic three diminished 7 chords are in each quadrant. Let's say we move this little handy little tool and we pick a different quadrant. Right? We pick a different quadrant. Well, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. And in any given quadrant, all 12 chromatic tones are there for you. All 12 chromatic tones are in any given quadrant. No matter how you turn your little handy tool, and you do that, you're going to get all 12 tones, all 12 chromatic tones. Okay, that's pretty cool, right? And then I already talked about contiguous cell chords can be formed. I did a video on that. Contiguous means they're touching. They're right beside each other. They could be touching on the side. They could be touching on the corner. It doesn't matter. They're touching. We talked about that. All right. And this is the single tone method where each letter in each cell represents a single tone. Right. Or you can do the tone chord setup. You can have one cell representing a chord and one a tone, and you can combine those to make nice chords, very nice chords. I did a video on that. And in each slice here, you have a cross reference. In other words, if you had your C tonal center, I did a video on this. This is your subject slice because your tonal center's in this slice, this subject slice. Across from that, your aggregating slice. So we know that this is the aggregating slice, all right? And this is your aggregating major here, and that's a G flat or F sharp, right? So you have up here in your subject slice, you have an F sharp indicated, so you have a cross reference in each slice for its aggregating major tone or chord. In each slice you have that. No matter which slice you choose, you still get it. It's a handy little thing, right? And you can use your chart. I showed this in a video previously, how you can find chords and create chords by combining. I showed this in a previous video. Let's say your tonal center here was C, all right? And you can combine chords and tones, or tones with tones. In fact, let me show you this here. Here's one that I did in a previous video, and I showed how to make a B flat dominant seventh chord. And one way was to take a B flat major chord, add the A flat tone, and you get a B flat dominant 7. But look at this. With your amplified circle of fifths, all you got to do is pick your tones. B flat, single tone, A flat, single tone, F, and D. You see the green dot? Take the tones with the green dots, and that's another way to get your B flat dominant 7. And down here's yet another way. You have your B flat tone with your D diminished chord, and you get the B flat dominant 7. So just right here, you see 3 ways, 1, 2, 3, to get a chord. All right? So we talked about that. And then another feature, yet another feature of the amplified circle of fifths, which I talked about in several videos, was the circle shortcut to the blues. I don't need to talk about that. That's a really handy thing. I love it and I use it all the time. And then I said that you can determine chord compatibility. I did videos on this. Let's say your subject is a major chord. I talked about that, how to find compatibility. Let's say your subject, your tonal center is minor. All right, let's say C minor. I talked about that. If you think about it and study it, you say, oh, that's pretty neat. And then finally, you have, this is a great thing I like. You have intra-ring, tricell tone groups yield scales. Now, I already talked about this, so I won't go on and on. We're running late here, all right? But this is a beautiful thing. Now, first I have to tell you that I did mention in a previous video that some people who worked on the circle of fifths, they did this, they did that. I don't think they made any meaningful changes, but one change they made was some people have your basic tones, your C, F, and G, then they have your minor chords, right? Your major, your minor, and they stuck the B right below the A, which is right below the C, because they wanted to make it nice and neat and symmetrical. But this is arbitrary. This is not the correct spot for the B. You'll see this on the internet, but I claim it's a bad position, and I'll tell you why right now. Let's look at the regular circle of fifths with no markings on it, all right? Here's how we start out. Now, if you take, this is really neat. If you take your circle of fifths, and let's say you took, as an example, these three tones, all right? Now that would be a B flat perfect chord. You have B flat, all right? You have E flat and F. That's your perfect chord. So I marked them with the red or pink dot, all right? Now if you took the tones from each of these chords, you took all the tones, 3 here, and 3 here, you would get the tones that are shown inside this red or pink border. You would get this. It's like kind of a claw hook figure. It's kind of a claw hook figure. If you took the tones of each of these chords and combined them, you would get this, and they fall within the quadrant. All right? Now think about that. This is a beautiful thing. If you took the tones, let's say we went to our minor data ring, we took the tones of these 3 minor chords. You see the green dot? I think it's green. I think you'll see green, I hope. All right? You will get these tones that are shown within the green border. All right? You would see the tones that are, let me get my handy tool here, shown within the green border. All right? If you took the tones from these minor chords, that's what you would get. You would get the same shape, all right? And you took the tones of the major chords that I showed with the pink dots, all right? And you got that. And you can do more. If you take the tones, all right, of the counter major ring, see the dots? The counter major rings, and you put them all together, you'd still get your same claw hook design. And this is why I say earlier, this is why I said that the contrived placement of that B originally, all right, in other words, that 7th tone in your scale really shouldn't be here. Because if you do, it doesn't work. It messes up everything. The whole system is messed up. Now here's another pretty neat thing. If you took, let's use our handy tool. If you took a quadrant, right, and you took the tones of these 3 chords, and they would be diminished, they're in the diminished data ring, all right, and you mapped them out, you would get this these three slices here, this big piece of the pie, you would get those tones. Now let's show it without the handy tool. So here we have within the border of the purple color, or violet, all right, you'd have a C blues scale or the tones of the G blues scale. Look at that. In this quadrant here, and you take the tones of these diminished chords and add them all up, you're going to get the tones necessary for your C blues scale or your G blues scale. All right. These are what we called tone scales. In other words, you can pull your C blues scale from this quadrant, or you can pull your G blues scale from this quadrant. In other words, they're called tones. You pull them out and you take what you need. So over here, you would get within the border of the blue, you see the blue? You would get your G major scale or your E minor 3 scale. In other words, your relative minor. You would get that. And up here, you would get your G. I hope I'm reading this right. Yeah, you would get the same thing up here. You would get your G major scale and your E minor 3, which is basically your relative minor. And you would get that within the green border. Now that's hard to explain, but I'm trying to take away the confusion. But this is a beautiful thing. Think about this. Think about this. Take your tones from your 3 major chords, or take your tones from your 3 minor, or take your tones from your 3 diminished, or the 3 from your outer data ring, your counter major ring, and you get this. This is a really important feature to study and understand about the amplified circle of fifths. Okay, I know I took too long, I apologize, but this is really important. I think this is really what makes this shine, and it demonstrates that this might have merit. This might prove to be useful over time. And I apologize for taking so long. Thanks for being really, really patient, and good night.